This won't take long.
Thanks for letting me
It won't.
borrow a little bit of time.
Oh yeah, no. It's I don't want to curtail the conversation, and you know there's a creative element, and then there's an infrastructure element, and quite often the infrastructure element is a lot simpler in terms of what we have to talk about, and frankly, I was just as interested in watching that as you were. So, one thing I wanted to do, I was gonna give for those who are less familiar with StorNext a little kind of overview of what StorNext is all about. But I think most of you I think everyone in this room has StorNext in one form or another. So what I figured I'd do is chunk this down a little bit, give you the most important bits of information that you need, namely what just came out in December in 5.4 that you might find interesting and useful. And because we greatly appreciate your patronage, and we want to make sure that you're aware of what's about to come out. So I have a preview of the features that are going to be part of 5.5. Okay. So 5.4, the main features that we introduced here were what we call Flex Tier. I'll talk about that specifically. The dynamic application environment allows you to run programs like, for example, IPv. IPv Curator is now available to run as a virtual machine in Excelis. So if you don't want to use another server to deploy an application like IPv or Telestream or Aspera or Elements Gateway or something like that, all of those applications are available to run as a virtual machine in the KVM hypervisor environment that we now provide within Excelis. Right? It cuts down on server deployments, cuts down on networking requirements, so it uses fewer ports. It puts those apps right in the controller, so all that happens right in the controller. You get direct access to the storage without having to go through a network interface. So there's some advantages there, and we take care of fencing off the performance, so you don't have to worry about anything affecting the storage performance whatsoever. Right? The only limitation is you can run one hypervisor environment. It can be Linux or Windows, and you can run multiple apps within an environment, but currently we're only supporting one hypervisor environment, one virtual machine. Okay. We support new connectivity protocols, 40 gig E, that should be FDR InfiniBand, sorry for the typo, and 32 gig fiber. And we've changed the deployment of StorNext Connect, which is the administration and management and monitoring interface, so that it is now an app-based infrastructure. So each component of Connect is now a separate app, and we can modify it over the air and update it on a different cycle than StorNext. So this allows us some flexibility on what we can do to provide new tools in Connect. You don't have to do a monolithic upgrade to get new monitoring capabilities in Connect, so this gives us a lot more flexibility. Flex Tier is an important feature for those of you who are considering doing anything with the cloud. Let me put it this way, anything more than having a directory that you're going to drag and drop into an Amazon account or something like that. That's probably a manageable use of the cloud for most of you, but many of you are doing thousands of files across many directories and many projects. So what Flex Tier does is it brings StorNext automation and policy-based management of files to your own public cloud accounts and to third-party object storage private cloud accounts. So you can use this to push and pull content to and from any of the Amazon services or any of the Microsoft Azure services. And currently, the Google S3 connector eventually will get to all the Google services as well. Right? So if you have an Amazon account, you have a Microsoft Azure account, you can set up a policy in StorNext to move content automatically out there and track it and maintain visibility. And that's the other important part of that, is that not only your admins, if you want it to be extended to your client users, even through their application, if they were to open an application dialog and they found a stub of a truncated file that had been moved to the cloud and they needed that back, they could simply open that file from within Premiere and it would call it back from the cloud. Obviously, it depends on your connectivity, how fast that's going to come back. But you never lose track of your assets. And this has already been picked up. Our first customers are starting to take delivery of this. Sony Pictures UK just turned it on and is using it now. So one of the issues with the cloud, part of it is what to put in the cloud, but the other is how the heck do I get there in a orderly fashion, the on-ramp. And on-ramps have been difficult and in some cases costly. And if you're using StorNext already, this could be a great way for you to use a little bit of cloud to provide some extra capacity on demand, free up some, like I said before, free up some primary storage, get yourself a little extra space, maybe bring that back down later on. In the long run, cloud is not a value in terms of long-term capacity storage of files. You're going to spend more in the cloud than you will on tape or object storage, especially once you get out to 2 or 3 years or once you get over a petabyte. But for short-term bursting of capacity, it's perfect for that. Okay? So now 5.5, I'm cognizant of the time, and there's really some very interesting features here. The last one, you can, that last one is okay. These features are going to be well understood before they come out, and it's fine. But the first few I need to make sure that you understand. I'm telling you about features that have not yet been officially committed to a particular release. So if I tell you about a feature and it doesn't end up in the package that's called 5.5, please don't call my house or follow my children to school or anything like that. I'm not in control of that, and in fact, sometimes the engineers aren't even in control of that. So, but I'm giving you an idea of what's currently planned for the package, so that you know what's in there.
Do you have a GA target for 5.5?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a GA target date for 5.5?
It's sometime in the next calendar quarter, so between somewhere around April to June, and that's our current target. So here is a list of the features. I actually have a slide on each of these, so I'm just going to go to the slide. The first one is replication-based data protection. This is the ability for multiple StorNext instances to remain synchronized. And let me preface this by saying one of the changes in 5.5 is a systemic change in the way metadata is handled. We're moving to something more akin to a journaled file system, a journaled database. So we keep track of changes. We can transmit those changes very quickly from one machine to another. We can reconcile those changes across the two machines, moving content if necessary. And that way we can do a lot of things that we didn't used to be able to do. So a lot of the features in this release are based on this new way of tracking data with the file system metadata and being able to move quickly between systems. So this first one is the ability to have two machines essentially maintain synchronization, starting off by an initial synchronization move of everything, but then everything else is incremental. So in the matter of seconds, if someone does something to a file or makes a copy or archives something or moves it from one place to another or even changes the content of a file, that would be reflected in the database within seconds, and depending on how much content is needed to move within the content itself in a matter as long as it takes to transfer across. So this is really good from a business continuity standpoint. Disaster recovery is a different thing. Disaster recovery would be where you'd need to bring everything back to your facility. And this is not intended to be disaster recovery. This is more of a business continuity solution. Eventually, we will get to the point where you'll be able to right now, this is only for data that is part of the file system, but not managed by Storage Manager as an archived file. It'll do all the files themselves, but not the archive target. That's a next release. So we needed to do some reconciliation of what do you do with multiple archives targets and things like that. Andre, did you have a?
I just had a clarification point. So Dish, as a customer, uses our current replication.
Yes.
I would say maybe touch on the plan for our current replication.
This is a completely different and considerably improved from a performance standpoint version of replication. And so this is going to replace the previous incarnation of replication. So I don't want you to, this is not going to work like the old replication. It's actually going to provide some additional functionality and definitely additional performance. The next one is file system auditing. So a lot of our customers, especially in the film industry, they work with the MPAA or other types of content protection organizations. They need to be able to audit the trail of a file based on who touched it, when they touched it, what they did with it, where did it move from, where did it go to, when did that happen. All of that is now going to be tracked, and you can generate a log on a file by file or directory by directory or a volume by volume basis of all the changes. Okay? I see applause. in the audience. Yeah. This is, as you know, this is something that people have been asking for some time. Here's another one. I hope this is a big winner for you. This goes back to your intern. We're just gonna let you throttle bandwidth to that intern. Okay, so quality of service will allow you to do bandwidth reservation and bandwidth throttling selectively on a per client basis. So if you have a review session coming up with a producer and you're going to do a 4K uncompressed playback from a Resolve color correction system, and you don't want all the other editors in the facility screwing with the performance of that playback, even if it's just for the next hour, you can go to that client and you can reserve as much bandwidth as you want, and the rest of the bandwidth will be parceled out among the other users on demand. The opposite is true as well. You could have lower rent workers, for lack of a better term, if they're doing logging or they're doing some low res editing, and they have no business consuming more than a gigabyte per second of bandwidth, then just limit them to whatever it is you want them to be limited to. When they hit the limit, they'll hit a wall on bandwidth, but because of their role, because of their activity level, that may be okay for you. In that case, all the other bandwidth is allocated on a dynamic basis to people who ask for it. So you could do both if you wanted. You could reserve some for the high value people, you could limit some for the low value people, and everything in the middle gets dynamically flowed. Okay? By the way, the sync feature, I'll call it sync rather than replication. This is something that would be licensed on a customer basis. So not everybody wants this. File system auditing will be built in to StorNext. Quality of service will be built in. Multi-site shared object-based archive is huge. This is going to allow customers with multiple locations who are working in StorNext environments independently to use a shared archive target and be able to share content with other systems, other facilities, by using that cloud or object storage private cloud as a store location. What would happen is if someone archives a piece of content to the cloud, the shared system would get a stub pointer file in archive state pointing to that file. They could open it from their system and it would pull the content down when requested. Okay, so this is think of it as super Dropbox for your StorNext system, right? And so it will allow you to share between locations. Online Stripe group management. This is for people that want to scale their system, but they don't want to have to relay out their Stripe groups, and they don't want to have to create another volume. So instead of creating a new volume, what you would do is you would install some additional storage, apply that storage to an existing Stripe group. That Stripe group would grow, and the content would be automatically rebalanced and defragged. Okay? So this can be used to vacate Stripe groups. It can be used to move content from one to the other. You can even delete a Stripe group if you want to reclaim that storage for another organization. So think of it as a way of at any time you could reorganize the Stripe groups in your storage. And by the way, all this happens non-disruptively. So obviously, if someone's working in that Stripe group, then there's going to be an impact on them. But for everyone else, it's a non-disruptive change.
How does that compare to how you can do that today? Dynamically growing Stripe groups, and how is it non-disruptive if the clients have to reboot to see the new volumes?
Andre, maybe you know more about that than I do.
So, a little more, but not. Because it's a new feature and I haven't been allowed to talk about this.
Well, no.
But essentially today, yes, we have the ability to grow a Stripe group by adding ones to that Stripe group. It is not as dynamic as one would like. What I mean is generally that Stripe group goes down during the migration of that data and that expanding of Stripe group. It is something that our engineering department likes to do specifically and not let people like myself or others touch and do. With this process, it is done via a GUI and via a more automated fashion versus currently today it's all done via SN defrag, which of course everyone hates the word defrag. But this is a combination of a host of tools that are already sort of built in and a much more streamlined approach to doing it.
When you say there will be an impact if you're in that strike group, is it just a performance impact? But
Yeah.
it's still available.
Right.
Okay.
It's moving things around. So you're gonna depending on how much you're pulling, you're gonna either feel that or you're not. So.
And I would say that it is so if you look at sort of disk functions, serving data, reads and writes are primary functions. Disk rebuilds can be a primary function, right? If there's a failed disk, right, the controller's going to take an aspect of that. This case, doing
Background.
strike group migration is a primary function. It's meant to happen as fast as possible. So your reading of the file is going to be independent with this process.
I would suggest if you're going to add storage and extend a stripe group that you might want to just do it overnight, right? Let it happen during that time, even though you could keep running if you have to. But the goal is to get that extra capacity available to your users as quickly as possible.
Potential migration strategy as opposed to forklift?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
Right.
Very cool.
Yes, exactly.
And QXS, whiz bang, whenever it comes out,
Yeah.
Quarks is fast.
Exactly.
Quarks cheaper.
Or organic storage, or crystalline storage, or whatever the next world of storage looks like, right? So a couple of some new storage manager enhancements, LTFS enhancements and support for latest versions of LTFS. Also stretching the managed file systems from 1.4 billion to 2 billion. I don't know how many of you are struggling with a $1.4 billion ceiling on your managed files, but we're going to continue to move that out. But the big features here for those using Storage Manager to manage archives is this ability to age off a copy and to be able to manage which copies are considered primary, secondary, tertiary, etc. So currently when you make an archive and you say I want 3 copies, it goes, okay, copy 1 is here, copy 2 is there, copy 3 is there. But you don't have the ability to say, all right, now I don't need copy 2 anymore. So that's what we've added. So if you archive it, let's say you get in some dailies and you put those in the cloud and on tape, and you're doing your project work, and you'd say, okay, the cloud is my protection copy. And you finish the project, you say, okay, I don't need to touch the one on tape, I'm going to keep that one, but I want to free up that cloud space and stop paying for that. This allows you to age off that cloud copy without disrupting the connection between the pointer and the archive copy on tape. Okay? So those are the big points. And I think it's 1 o'clock. I'm right on time.
Just real quick on the audit trail, can you use it as an access point and talk about keeping storage clean and that type of thing? Can you actually use that to say, okay, hey, this hasn't been accessed for 30 days, we'll move it from primary to...
Well, that would be done with a regular StorExcel policy. You'd create a policy that says if a file hasn't been touched in 30 days, move it to tape. And if it hasn't been touched for an additional 30 days, remove it from primary storage and leave it only on tape.
That exists now?
That exists now. Yep.
So as far as quantum storage, with, in case of hard drive failure, have they ever thought about doing a hot swap drive?
You can configure hot swap. You can configure RAID arrays with hot swap configuration. It costs you storage capacity. So, but you can do hot swap configurations. It depends on the size of the drive. Hot swap. It depends on the size of the drives that you're using, how fast the rebuilds are, and most people figure, well, I'll just rebuild, right? Hot spares, yeah.
All right, we'll go.
Thank you so much, Lance. It's been a pleasure.